Paige, Barney.
Well, I think going after Dr. Wise might be the most intimidating thing that I've ever done. But I'm really excited to talk to all of you today about some research that I've done from pieces from the Hispanic Society. One of the most fascinating parts of this collection I found has been how other cultures have influenced Spanish art. And I feel like one of the best examples of that is actually the baptismal font. We know that Muslims and Christians have lived together in the Iberian Peninsula for centuries, not without conflicts, but there have been periods with, relative peace and cohabitation, things like that. These two cultures and their relationships are reflected perfectly in this baptismal font, and we see this interesting use of symbolism to relate to both cultures here. So we have an octagonal baptismal font with alternating panels. We can see that this particular baptismal font was actually created by Muslim artists, but for a Christian church in Toledo. These Muslim artists were quite familiar with Christian symbols and iconography, as seen by the cross of Golgotha on one of the panels, and the next panel over is the Christogram, or the monogram, the Latin monogram for Christ's name, the IHS. And I actually want to focus a little bit about this panel with the Christogram on it. While it has many Christian symbols, it also includes Islamic symbolism as well, flanking both sides of the Christogram. And on the bottom corners we see two hands surrounded by eyes, and these are actually the hand of Fatima. Now the hand of Fatima actually it originates in Tunisia about 2 millennia ago. It's quite an old symbol, and it was adopted by Muslims and given the name Hand of Fatima after the daughter of Muhammad. It was seen as a protector against evil and a talisman to protect those who wore it. While generally the hand of Fatima is seen with the evil eye on the palm of its hand, it isn't uncommon to see the eyes actually surrounding the hand like we have here. However, that is not to say that the palm of the hand is bare. In fact, upon closer examination, we find that every single hand found in the baptismal font actually has a mark or a prick in each palm, which converts this hand of Fatima to the stigmatted hand of Christ. This hand alone then becomes this dual symbol for both communities. And when we reflect about this with its context of a baptismal font, it seems fitting that both a protective talisman and a hand of healing and a hand of protection of Christ is also necessary. Having a subject matter that is only the hand of God is not uncommon for Christian works as well, especially in the medieval period. We see a number of different hands being depicted, either in a blessing gesture or with a stigmata showing, like both of these pictures here. And as we continue to delve into this in the context, even from more of a Muslim perspective, we notice that actually Christ is mentioned a few times in the Quran. In fact, in the 5th surah, Allah or God speaks to Jesus saying, "By my leave, and thou healest those born blind and the lepers by my leave, and behold, thou bringest the dead by my leave." So we see that Jesus' commission in the Quran was central to his healing and teaching power. And as we think about the hand of Christ that heals and the hand of Fatima that protects, in the context of a baptismal font where people and Christians come to leave worldliness behind, to become protected by God, and to be healed of their past transgressions and original sin, and become clean. But as we further contextualize this time period, we can find that this is actually created during the Black Plague that was spreading throughout Europe. Europe was affected. All of Europe had about 40% of their population died due to the Black Plague, but countries such as Spain, Italy, England, and France actually lost 50 to 60% of their population. Because of that, I can only imagine how these communities were frightened by an unknown illness that was taking the lives of so many people. Another layer of protection that these Muslim artists added to the baptismal font can be seen on the bottom section of the baptismal font. It's a thistle, and this is a more kind of contemporary version of a thistle, or contemporary to the baptismal font. These thistles have been identified by researchers and scholars as a blessed thistle, given its name by a Benedictine monk who believed that it had medicinal properties, often used in ointments for different ailments, but especially during the Black Plague. These blessed thistles were often seen or found naturally in regions in the Mediterranean, such as Portugal, Italy, even Iran, but they were quite prevalent in Spain. So both communities would have been quite familiar with them. And in fact, there were several recipes that people would use blessed thistle in during the Black Plague as ointments. And this interesting painted thistle on this baptismal font adds to this protection that comes from baptism. That they're not only looking for spiritual protection from God, but also a physical protection to help aid them during this time. As we learn more about this thistle, I think the most interesting part of it is actually where it's placed. It's not in the main panel, so it's not quite as obvious or evident when you're walking around, but as you search for it, you can find it underneath this baptismal font. The placement, as I was doing more research, I found was quite interesting. Baptismal fonts at this time were not going to be buried into the grounds of the church, but rather set on a stand, as was typical for the region and the time period. And this stand would have made almost a stem to this thistle drawing that plants itself in the soil of the city of Toledo, which makes it accessible not only for the Christian community, but also for the Muslim community, that there will be blessings and protection for everyone in the entire city of Toledo. We see that these symbols of the dual symbol of the hand of Fatima and the hand of Christ and the thistle are meant to connect these two communities together. I often think about our own situation we were in about 4 years ago in the pandemic, when we saw a pretty mysterious illness cross the globe, and people from different nationalities and religions came together and prayed together for safety for specific people or nations in general. And they were tied together during those tumultuous times. This baptismal font I've found has been the perfect symbol of a very similar effect that has happened, where two cultures that are quite different and have had a number of conflicts during their history in the Iberian Peninsula have been drawn together almost as a way to call upon God for protection during these times. Thank you.